Joining us from the principal opposition, the Congress party, Dr. Shashi Tharoor joins us on the union budget. Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor, for being with us. Without getting partisan, what are some of the things that you like about Union Budget 2019? Because there are things that they have done within the realm of fiscal discipline. Many thought and were bracing up actually for fiscal profligacy. What we have seen is fiscal prudence remarkably in an election year.
Well, I'm not so sure that you should be granting them that certificate of good housekeeping quite so easily, Supriya. We've already seen on factcheck.in that a number of the figures that were issued by Finance Minister Piyush Goyal today were blatant inaccuracies or exaggerations, and that's to use polite language. So we don't know that any of their numbers will actually add up. But if you wanted me to point out the good things, I think the exemption, the increased deduction for the middle class is a good thing. I applaud that. I must say that this is a government that has been busy dipping its hands into the pockets of the middle class through other taxes, notably a swinging 20 rupees a litre on every litre of petrol that people buy at the pump. So in some ways they're only giving back to the middle class what they have been unjustly taking from it. But I'm glad they're doing that. The other thing that potentially could be good, though the actuarial calculations need to be done, is the attempt to offer some sort of social security benefits to unorganized workers. The problem is if at the age of 29 you have to start paying 100 rupees a month in order to qualify at the age of 60 for 3,000 rupees a month, I wonder if the numbers really do favor the beneficiaries, and it'll be good to know what the actual calculations will work out to be, whether somebody at the age of 29, if he puts 100 rupees a month into something else, some other investment, might he not do much better than through this scheme. But those are the two good things in terms of intention. The minimum income guarantee for farmers actually suffers from the crippling reality that their proposed amount of 6,000 rupees a year, which is 500 rupees a month, will not make the slightest difference to the lives of anybody. 500 rupees a month is not going to be meaningful income support. What the Congress party had talked about, that our party president announced, would be a minimum income guarantee for all the poor that people can actually live on. You can't live on 500 rupees a month, but we're talking about a larger sum of money. We're talking about extending it to landless farm labor,
Tharoor,
as well as to the urban poor who are excluded from Mr. Modi's scheme. And we would talk about doing this through a review of many of the existing subsidies and rolling some of those into such a scheme. Yeah.
But Dr. Tharoor, I think the question that one would want to ask you is that if they had not touched the farming community, if they had not done anything for India's agricultural community, the allegation would have been that they've been very anti-farmers. Now, this is what they could have done in the realm without getting past the fiscal prudence mark, without breaching 3.3% too much. This is perhaps the best that could have been offered. Do you not agree that India's farm sector needs a lifeline, it needs a help, it needs some sort of an aid, and this perhaps is going to not move the needle too much, but it will come in handy?
Look, you're being very generous to them. I'm going to be a little more cynical and say the entire purpose of this exercise appears to have been to transfer 2,000 rupees to landholding farmers before the votes are cast in the election. It's as simple as that. That's why he went to the trouble of specifying the detail that it's 6,000 rupees in 3 equal installments, of which the first would be paid right away. So, I mean, you know, this is an election budget. The entire thing is an election exercise. And I must say, it sounds a bit disingenuous to applaud, what is it, Saaf Niyat and Spasht Niti and so on, which honestly are just good words to cover an absolutely cynical vote-gathering exercise, which in fact doesn't address the real issue of minimum income guarantee for the poor. We are the one party that's prepared to tackle that fundamental challenge facing India. And when we release our manifesto, we will come up with very substantial detail, including numbers, that will put this government's proposal completely in the shade.
But that's a question that a lot of people are raising, and you know, bear with me for being too gracious for them and for being a little cynical with you. I think I'm going to do the exact opposite when I do interview Finance Minister Goyal. I think that's my job. As a journalist, I'm supposed to be skeptic and cynical, but bear with me, because I think the question that a lot of people are raising and the question that is being pointed out is, will competitive populism be at the cost of India's fiscal prudence? You know, the minimum income guarantee that the Congress party has referred to, and in some sense you try to stump the government with that. Will that come at the cost of fiscal prudence?
No, because I think we are very conscious of that. Don't forget that the person who is directing this effort is a three-time finance minister who knows what he's talking about. What Mr. Chidambaram is doing is looking at those subsidies that haven't worked effectively, those subsidies that have, the amounts involved, and what it would cost to provide a decent level of subsistence income. We don't want to offer a minimum income so high that no one has any incentive to work, but we don't want to offer it so low that it will merely be a token gesture that will make not the slightest difference to anybody's lives, as is true of this 500 rupees. So, you know, the onus is always on the government to come up with their plans. They have the staff, they have the taxpayer-funded research establishment. They should be the ones who control the budget and give us real numbers. So I don't give the government any particular credit for this. I think asking the opposition to provide more numbers than the government is a bit unreasonable, but we intend to do it before the elections anyway.
Fair point. Your colleague, Mr. Chidambaram, has said that the government has gone beyond its authority. Before laying office, it has gone and tried to amend the IT Act. The question, though, is that at a time when consumption and investment are both weak, is it not fair to pump prime consumption, which hopefully will put the virtuous cycle of investment back in motion as well?
I'm sorry, we have a bit of an audibility problem, so I'm not sure I've got your question fully. If you're saying, were you talking about industrial policy? It wasn't very clear, Supriya.
No, my question really, sir, is that the fact that there is some sop for the middle class, the tax sops that have come, do you believe it's going to put some amount of extra money in the hands of people, will pump prime consumption, which in turn should crowd in investments as well?
Well, that's certainly something we would hope. I mean, I think that we ourselves would have wanted to give the middle class more of a break, but we'd also not want to hit them as hard as this government has hit them with petrol taxes, GST at high levels on items of regular consumption and so on. I think we would have started off being fairer to the middle class, but given that the middle class has taken so many blows from the BJP government in the last 3 years, certainly at least this sop should do them some good and should come as some relief.
All right, one quick question before I let you go, Dr. Tharoor. This is election season. The budget will be well forgotten in a day or two, and every focus is going to be on general elections, the big battle ahead of us. In some sense, this budget was supposed to be an election budget. This budget was supposed to touch upon the electorate, stoke sentiment there. Do you believe they've been successful in doing so? Will you concede ground there?
No, I think it is an election budget. We didn't expect anything less. We expected the budget to include announcements that are brazenly targeting vote banks. But to that, we would simply counter with the fact that if these were the right things to do, why did you wait 5 years to do them? My message really is this is too little, too late. 6,000 rupees a year is too little for farmers. Coming up with a rather far-fetched pension or social security scheme for the unorganized is too late. A lot of the things that they've offered us, particularly in the realm of vision, which is an interesting but unsupported set of ideas that really boil down to building castles in the air without actually constructing the foundations on the ground to get there. So when you have a number of claims made which are challenged by fact-checking organizations, when you have propositions advanced that are unsupported by the evidence, and when you have visions and fantasies that are offered to the nation which don't seem to have any of the required underpinnings to be able to substantiate them, then I'm afraid all you have is another set of election jumlas. And I don't think that we in the Congress party are going to be terribly fazed. We will point this out to people. To give you one simple example, we have been going on for some time. I represent a coastal community about the needs of fisher folk. As recently as a few months ago, I asked in Parliament about creating a separate Ministry for Fisheries. The government replied it was not necessary. Now, at the very last minute, a month before the Election Commission declares its notification, you suddenly see the proposal for a department, a new separate Department of Fisheries. It's essentially an admission that they have neglected the fisher folk for 5 years. That's the kind of story we're seeing throughout this budget.